All of you get a star on your forehead today for your perseverance and your ability to make it here, especially if you came from the north. Coming from South Valley wasn't too bad, but thank you again. We appreciate you being here today, taking some time out of your busy day. And we have some information that we'd like to share with you today. But first of all, we would like to thank Kelly Ward with Zion's Bank for hosting us and providing this awesome facility. I'm sure many of you have been here before, and the awesome views that you have from the 8th floor of the Rock Canyon room here. But thank you to Kelly and his group. And thank you again for you all being here. So without any further delay, I'd like to introduce Mayor Kafusi, who has a presentation, and we'll just go ahead and roll out this morning. And feel free, there's plenty of food because of our people who weren't able to make it, so feel free to get up and have some more if you'd like. Mayor Kafusi.
Thanks, Dixon. Yes, he said, I'm Mayor Kafusi, and I have the best job in the world. I'm the mayor of Provo City, and not only am I the mayor of the best city, but we're sitting in one of our best rooms in the city of Provo. This beautiful Rock Canyon room, as you look out, is just one of our favorites, with the views of the city to this side and the mountains to this side. So thank you for coming and joining me for breakfast. I want to start by, I want to invite Dixon back up. He doesn't even know I'm doing this. But Dixon, my friend, has been working with the city as of the 30th of January. He's been with us for 25 years. So now just stay with us 25 more, that's all we ask. I just wanted to recognize him. I thought I could have him come in my office and do it, but I thought this is a great place because this is kind of his baby and he does all the work for us, and he's just a phenomenal economic development director. Now back to business. Because of our organizations like yours and your commitment to Provo, Provo continues to be one of the best places in the country for one reason or another. And because of that, I want to give a brief update on what is happening. So we put together a video to highlight the many projects taking place in Provo. We hope you enjoy it, and thank you again for making Provo an amazing place to be. Mountain Vista Business Park. The Mountain Vista Business Park, formerly known as the Ironton Still Site, has been transformed and improved to an industrial standard. As a result, businesses and developers have been drawn to the area, and investment in Provo continues to grow because of it. From the 1920s to the 1960s, Ironton was owned by U.S. Steel. The site was donated to Brigham Young University to be used as a research park, but the university decided not to be in the development of business parks. After passing through some other organizations, the Ironton site landed into Provo's care. Working with the Environmental Protection Agency and the Utah Department of Environmental Quality, Provo City was able to bring the old steel mill site to the Mountain Vista Business Park it is today. In 2008, Action Target was the first business to expand into Mount Vista. Since then, several businesses and developers have made Mount Vista Business Park their home. In early 2018, Vanderhall Motor Works broke ground and constructed Phase 1 of 7 of their 1 million square foot facility. They will manufacture and sell their 3-wheeled roadster here in Provo. Hall Labs has been around in Provo since the 1950s, after Tracy Hall invented the man-made diamond. Since then, Hall Labs has been an incubator for innovation. Products like Vanderhall's 3-wheeled roadster, Medic.Lab's smart toilet, Garage Smart, and several others are creations from Hall Labs. Elevate Health Sciences was founded in 2015. They are a contract manufacturer, nutraceutical company that produces hard shell and soft gel capsules, like fish oils, vitamins, and minerals. Earlier in 2018, Nu Skin purchased Elevate Health Sciences and are now expanding their current facility by 50,000 square feet, with the option to add another 50,000 at a later date. Chris McKay, a local developer, has spent a significant amount of time and money in Mount Vista. With now 2 buildings built and another 3 planned, Chris, in conjunction with economic development, has brought several companies to the Mount Vista Business Park. Finally, Provo City was recently awarded a $1.8 million grant from the Economic Development Administration. The funds will be used to build a road, which upon completion, a company has stated they will invest $35 million in building a tech center campus. Since the completion of the remediation efforts until now, the property tax went from $0 to $1.3 million. Upon build-out of the entire park, Mount Vista will bring in millions of dollars in property tax revenue, and thousands of jobs will be created with salaries above the county wage, effectively making it an economic powerhouse within the region. Downtown. Downtown is one of the premier destinations that makes Provo unique and charming, boasting over 70 restaurants and retail stores, with the vast majority of them locally owned and operated. Downtown is experiencing unprecedented growth. Some of the major projects that are completed or currently under construction include the 4th District Courthouse, the Hyatt Place, and PEG's 200 City View apartments. Along with PEG's Freedom Commons and condos, Justin Earle's The Bridges, Brandon Fugel's University Tower, and Provo City's new police station and city center. All projects combined will bring in hundreds of millions of dollars of investment within Provo's downtown. Citywide. The retail landscape has changed over the past year. In November 2018, Target Express opened up one of the first of its new urban stores in Provo. Utilizing the old Big Lots store in Riverside Plaza, the 25,000 square foot Target Express has everything one would need, from electronics to clothes and groceries to skincare. East Bay Shopping Center was acquired by Woodside Capital of Fort Worth, Texas. With experience in other retail centers, Woodside has brought Ross Dress for Less, a first for Provo, that will be opening in a few months. Additionally, they are working with other national retailers and should have additional announcements later in 2019. The Shops at the Riverwoods recently celebrated its 20th anniversary and is currently undergoing renovations. New facades are on several of the buildings, and new establishments are now open, including R&R Barbecue and Sue's Cookies. The Macaroni Grill space is being redeveloped for several new retail spaces. Additionally, the movie theater will be undergoing renovations to make it a more luxurious experience for consumers. In the end, the total reinvestment will be over $10 million. Days Market is undergoing renovations, which include a new facade, entry, and interior upgrades. With a total cost of over $1.3 million, Days Market will continue to be a quality grocery store that is locally owned and operated within Provo. Last year, I signed an agreement that allows the proposed Noorda School of Osteopathic Medicine and the Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions to build their campus on 21 acres of the East Bay Golf Course. Prior to its construction, 3 holes will be constructed on the Cooney piece on the east side of the course. At full operation of the campus, the local economic impact of the combined schools could be approximately $100 million annually and could include 1,500 jobs, with more than $83 million in the construction business. This has the potential to increase the property tax base to an estimated $8 million in the first 15 years. Duncan Aviation is the world's largest privately owned business jet support facility. from airframe and engine maintenance to paint completions and instrument repairs. Duncan does it all. Additionally, Duncan has only 3 full-service facilities that serve their worldwide clientele: Lincoln, Nebraska, Battle Creek, Michigan, and in 2016, after being courted by Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Ogden, Utah, Duncan announced Provo would be the 3rd full-service facility in the western United States. In 2017, Duncan began the construction of their buildings on 45 acres of land near the airport. The Maintenance and Modification Center will be a 222,000 square foot facility, while the paint facility will be 53,000 square feet. The overall capital investment has been over $80 million, and Duncan will create approximately 450 jobs. Phase 1 of this project is completed, with the remaining to be completed in early 2020. Accolades. Over the past year, Provo has received several national awards, including, for the 2nd year in a row, number 1 Best Performing Cities, Milken Institute. Number 1 Best Cities for Job Growth, New Geography. Number 2 Mid-Market Job Diversification, Link Up. Number 3 Best College in America, Livability. Number 9 Best Places for Business and Careers, Forbes. When I'm recording that, I'm always so nervous and now to sit back and watch it, I'm just like, we're doing so many great things. Provo is just really coming along, and I couldn't be more proud. And thank you to all of you who are invested in Provo and willing to put your time and money and efforts into our city, because that's what makes it so wonderful. Now, Dixon, are we going now to our panel to do questions, or any questions about anything you saw today? No questions, that's good. We must have shown enough that, yes?
The theater receiving the upgrades, is that over by Riverwoods?
That's by Riverwoods, and it's going to be significant. Is anyone here from the Riverwoods? Oh, hi, come up, JJ, come up and talk about, come on up. No, just tell us about what's going on with the theaters. Come on up. It's a big enough deal that you need to come up to the pulpit.
So the AMC theater is going to be remodeling. They'll be replacing all of the seats in there. They'll actually take the seat count down and replace it with recliner seats, redo the lobby, redo the bathrooms, the carpet, the paint, so the entire inside will look completely different. They're going to add a prime theater screen, which is actually what we've been told is a step up from what IMAX is. The quality of picture, the experience that you get is a lot better, so we're super excited about them being able to add that in. That will be the first prime screen in the state of Utah. The closest one is in Westminster, Colorado, or Orange County, California. So we're really excited for that. We'll do a little bit of remodeling on the outside of the building as well, just to make sure that people know that it's changed and it's different. And that goes along with a lot of our other changes that they talked about there. We're redoing the stucco on the outside of the building, modernizing the shopping center, as well as adding new out parcels all the time right now. So we're super excited, lots of changes going, and lots of people excited. And then I'll say one thing, because I'm proud of this, we, by April, will be 100% occupied at Riverwoods, which is really awesome. So there we go.
So when I talked to him about that theater, if you kind of don't know what it is, have you been to Disneyland and been in a theater and all of a sudden you're watching and the ocean wind blows and all of a sudden you feel the wind over your face? That's my expectation, that's all. I want to feel wind, I want snowflakes if it's a snowy scene, I want a sea breeze if there's a sea breeze. It's going to be fantastic, and we're really excited for that to happen. Any other questions? Yes?
What's going in south of Riverwoods?
South of Riverwoods. Okay, Cameron, look at him. He's like, I know. Come on up, Cameron. Cameron is PEG Development, and we should, tell us your name that asked the question, just so that everyone can. Okay, great. Just so everyone knows.
Yeah, so we were involved with the Riverwoods a little bit on one of my partners owned the theater. We worked out an exchange to where we took the south parcel and then JJ and his company took the Riverwoods piece to really make it a much better experience, which is really exciting for those that have been in Provo for a long time. The JJ and his company have done an amazing job with Riverwoods from what it was before, and they've put the money into it that's been needed, which has been great for the community. We are building 250 apartments, market rate, more luxury type apartments on that property south where it was a bunch of old townhomes. So that's going fast and furious, if you guys have seen. I have a limited time that I've got to spend a bunch of money because of 1031, so it's we've been excited about it. I think there's some renderings at the site, but it'll be a real exciting project. Fairly dense. On the back side of it will be just a 10,000 square foot light to 10,000 square foot lots for people to build homes on.
Right. Any other questions? Okay.
Actually,
Oh, okay. I love this one.
downtown Provo, the bond passed.
I know. We're so excited. You want to hear about it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the bond has passed. We are already, the ball's rolling. We sold our bonds for a little over 3%, which is really good. We were thrilled. Has anybody watched bonds for $1,069,000 or plus $1 million be sold? It's a fascinating process. You go in the room, you're watching, there's nothing on the screen, and then it gets to 2 minutes before it ends, and all of a sudden, up come all these bids, and they're shuffling, and it's just like, you sweat because you're stressed, and you really don't know what's going on, but you just know people are bidding, and all of a sudden the clock ticks down and then freezes. And when it freezes, that's the winner. So it's fascinating, but we got them for just barely over 3%, which is fabulous. And we are hoping to break ground. Wayne, is it this, where did Wayne go?
Later this year.
Oh, there's Wayne. He's like comfort. I have to see Wayne to get. So later this year, we will break ground, and it's going to be fabulous. It looks like we're going to most likely build on site where we're at, and then move in and scrape the old, and then turn it over for commercial, retail, redevelopment. For that, we have four acres that aren't being utilized at all in downtown Provo, and they need to be utilized. So we're going to go to the northwest corner and give up all that Center Street front space so that it can be beautified and really make a difference. And I know I've talked to you, and you have ideas about what you want. Everyone has an idea about what they want on that, so we'll see.
I'm open. So is it going to be privately owned on the space you're currently on the east side? So the block of 3rd to 4th, are you thinking that might get released to private-public partnership or ground lease?
So
or
those are all options that we're looking at.
allowed to be discussed?
It's not, we're not, actually, I would discuss it if we were further down the road with it, but we're not yet. But our expectation is it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to fit in with the downtown Provo, the good work that Quinn's doing. We don't do it any good. The city center, blah, we're up off, nobody, I mean, we don't add to the beautiful Center Street. This new project will, and that's our whole point. Great, we're excited too. It's going to be, pick our architect next week. I mean, it is exciting. Any other questions? Okay, great. Dixon? Okay.
Thank you.
Introduce,
Thanks, Mayor.
everyone knows you, but.
Wayne Parker, I'm the city's chief administrative officer, and I've hit that stage where I need to, oops, what did I do wrong here? Okay, there we go. Okay, so we'll just run through a little bit of what's happening. The mayor talked quite a bit about the City Hall project, so we'll share some more information about that, and we'll talk about the anticipated wastewater treatment plant. And again, those are not particularly sexy things to talk about this time of morning, but we live our life around those kinds of issues. So let me just highlight a few things. So the mayor talked about our city facilities and public safety bond that passed in November. So we'll replace the existing city hall and police and fire stations in the downtown, as well as the Canyon Road Fire Station up on North Canyon Road. So we'll have about 166,000 square feet, which is enormous. About 75,000 square feet for the city hall and 90,000 square feet roughly for public safety. It will net out to 166 after you take out common areas and so on. And it'll be built west of the current facilities. So as the mayor said, we're currently reviewing architectural proposals. We'll be making a decision hopefully next week. We've got interviews scheduled with 6 different architectural firms. Most of them are a combination of a Salt Lake firm and then a national level firm that will be predominantly working on the public safety side. It's a pretty complex development to provide the level of security and so on that's required for a public safety center. We'll use a CMGC approach where we actually pick the general contractor early in the game, and they'll partner with the architect, and then we'll come up with a final design and cost. Our experience with this, we use the same process for the recreation center and for the new energy campus that we completed a year or so ago, and so our intent is to use the same practice and be able to get a very good cost, a very good product. Again, we'll begin earthwork and utilities late this year in terms of getting excavation done and utilities installed. Probably begin construction, begin to see building come out of the ground about a little over a year from now, and then we should be occupying in early 2022. So again, the bonds, the mayor indicated, as we sold them just a few weeks ago. Our city bond rating was AA plus or AA1, which is one step below a AAA municipal bond rating. So our net interest cost was just a shade over 3% for 20-year financing. And then various rates and maturities depending on what the market was requesting at the time the bonds were sold. They were sold to a group called Robert W. Baird, who's a regional, national level investor in municipal bonds. So we're excited about that. It was a very competitive bond sale, and we felt like we got an interest rate better than what we had planned on and expected. So as the mayor indicated, where will it be? So if you're looking at this map, and north is to the top. So the park you see on the left side, there is Pioneer Park, and directly across the street from that is the existing Firestone Tire Store and Rocky Mountain Drive-In, so that gets you oriented a little bit. So our intent is to build this project west of the Covey Center and then wrapping around a little bit onto 100 South. We would intend, at least at the outset, to provide surface parking. We'll do some structured parking underneath the buildings, but that'll be secure for public safety purposes predominantly. We'll surface park, share the parking again with the Covey Center. We'll provide some green space to try to do maybe some events and things that we could do in conjunction with the Covey. And then our intent is to take the area that we currently occupy between 3rd and 4th West along the Center Street frontage. And I don't know, again, whether it'll be sale or ground lease, but the intent is to open it up to redevelopment opportunities. Could be retail, could be mixed use, could be retail on the bottom and residential or office on top. So as we get a little closer to that, we'll go through a proposal process and evaluate options and consider what the market will bear at that time. Again, we're 3 years out from occupying the building, so we thought we'd wait about 18 months and then start the process of selecting a development partner to work with us. We keep getting questions about what it will look like. The answer is we don't know yet. We did retain an architectural firm in Salt Lake to help us as we anticipated the bond. So we went through and did all the space planning, we did the programming in the building. And so we had a couple of different concepts that they shared with us. The one that looks a little bit, I guess the upper left corner one was done a couple of years ago as a part of a re-envisioning of the 2 blocks that we sit on, done by a group called Placemakers, who came and shared some concepts with us about what things might look like. The other 2 are actually done by our architectural firm, again, just to give a concept of kind of massing. So you'll see, you can't really see very well in there, but But the fly space at the Covey Center goes up about 5 stories. And again, it's where sets and things are raised up into above the stage and then drop down during a performance and so on. So it'll be about that same scale, and then it tends to scale down as we approach 5th North or 5th West, so that we get this sense of not overwhelming the downtown landscape as it currently exists and trying to take advantage of the beautiful mountain views you have as you enter Provo from the west. So it will be something around that style. So it's not going to just be big and boxy and look like it doesn't fit in downtown. We're going to be very sensitive to that. And our architects have all brought in urban designers, the ones that have made proposals to us, brought in urban design firms to help make sure that we're keeping in scale and scope with what exists currently in downtown. So the second thing the mayor asked me to talk about was our wastewater treatment plant. This again is not very fun, and if you've ever been to the wastewater treatment plant, you'll understand why it's not very fun. But our plant is 65 years old. The technology is 65 years old for the most part. We can't meet current standards that the EPA is establishing for wastewater treatment and discharge, and particularly into a very environmentally sensitive Utah lake. And so the standards are very high, and we are not able to meet those with our current plant and technology. Additionally, we're getting fairly close to capacity on the plant. Again, 65 years ago, I don't think they expected we'd have 120,000 residents in Provo, and some recent population projections from the governor's office suggest at 2040, our build-out will be about 160,000 people. So we could see a 50% increase in population growth in the next 40 years. And so we need to be prepared for that with the facilities. And our intent is to get to drinking water quality effluent. So what we're putting into the lake is about the same quality as what we're pulling out of the aquifer. And that's important from the standpoint of the environmental sensitivity of the lake. So we're likely to be about $100 million in this project. We recently secured a low-interest loan at 1.25% interest, which, although we brag about our 3% interest on the City Hall, this kind of blew that one out of the water. From the state of Utah, the balance will be funded mostly on a pay-as-you-go basis over about a 6 or 7 year period to get the first 16 million gallons per day of capacity. And then we anticipate another 8 million gallons a day in capacity over the next 12 or 15 years. So again, when we hit our population peak, our capacity will be there to take care of it. Location options we discussed yesterday with the council. Actually, the potential locations. So one location is near the current treatment plant in the East Bay area, just off of 1860 South. We also own some property out near the airport along the Lakeview Parkway on the south side of the parkway that could be utilized for that facility as well. And the council will be reaching a final decision on that shortly. And then the choice of location will determine some other needed upsizing of lines and pump stations and so on. So there's advantages to both sites and cost advantages to both sites. So as we've been going through the site selection study, we'll be reaching final conclusion here shortly. What will it look like? So again, this is one where we don't know what it will look like. So tried to give you a few representative photographs of some recent treatment plants of about our size and scale around the country. So it'll look fairly industrial in nature, and so we like to put it in an area where it's kind of not subject to big public view. It's not one where, again, we take a few scout groups and school classes through. I can tell you once they've been through, they don't ever want to come back again. But we'd like to create an environment where maybe that wouldn't be quite as bad with the new treatment plant, where we could have a little bit of an educational facility and kind of work on helping people understand kind of the environmental sensitivity of the things we do here in Provo. So anyway, that's it for my presentation. Any questions on either of those significant projects? Well, good. It's always great to answer all your questions before you ask them, so thank you very much.
So thank you to the mayor and Wayne for presenting on those items. At this time, we're going to have Jeremy Kill come up and give a brief brief overview of the Opportunity Zone. But due to the snowstorm this morning, a lot of people from Salt Lake were stuck. So we're trying to get him on the phone and see if he can present. He is aware of it, so just bear with me. Please feel free to go grab some seconds, and we'll see if we can get him on the phone. In the meantime, we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. Appreciate it.
So we can pretty much put my phone right next to a microphone and see if that works. But the presentation is up, and so if you want to just say, hey, next slide, just let me know. And then just
Ladies and gentlemen, can we please reconvene? Can we please reconvene?
So as I mentioned earlier, Jeremy Kill is from Salt Lake. He's actually was instrumental in helping with some of the lobbying in DC to get some opportunity zones. And so we have Jeremy on the phone right now. And again, he was slated to be here, but again, with the snowstorm, unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it. So Jeremy, I'm going to put the mic up to the phone and just tell him to move to the slide. Move slides. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Oh, okay, great. So sorry that I couldn't be with you. You guys were all dealing with the same issue that I was, but somehow you guys managed to make it, and I couldn't. I have 18 inches of snow at the house, and I just could not dig out in time. So, anyway, sorry that I can't be with you. It's a pleasure to talk to you just for a few minutes about opportunity zones. I know you guys have, kind of a basic, probably some of you more than a basic understanding of this, but maybe some others just kind of a basic fundamental, level of understanding. As Cameron said, I've been involved in this now for a few years. I got connected, Jim Sorensen and I, up here in Salt Lake. Just by way of quick background, I used to run the Sorensen Impact Center at the business school here at the University of Utah. And Jim Sorensen and I worked with a group called the Economic Innovation Group back in DC, which is the sort of think tank that was the architect of the Opportunity Zone program. And so we worked with them over the course of a number of years to kind of shape the program and the incentive, and as Cameron said, kind of help educate the Congress and the administration. And ultimately, we're really excited to see it get put into the tax reform bill at the end of 2017. I just want to spend a couple of minutes, because people I think are pretty familiar with the structure of the incentive, but I think in a lot of cases they don't really understand sort of the context in which this program was brought into into legislation. And so I wanted to spend a quick minute on that. If you turn to the next slide, you should see a map of the U.S. And this is data from the Economic Innovation Group that I just mentioned a minute ago. This is basically articulating this kind of, this narrative or this notion that's really taken hold in popular media around there being two different Americas. One America where people are, doing pretty well, enjoying kind of a record bull run on the stock market since the end of the Great Recession, record low unemployment rates, et cetera, et cetera. And then another America that really has not emerged from the recession. This is, a set of communities around the country that still suffer from high unemployment rates. These are places that are still shedding jobs and firms since the end of the Great Recession and are really struggling. I mean, these are the places that are being left behind. The Economic Innovation Group came up with some research that really sort of, helped folks understand the plights of these two different types of communities in America. And the Opportunity Zone legislation was meant to be one, policy solution to try to address the disparity or the gap between these two different types of communities. If you flip to the next page, just really quickly, there are a number of indicators that you can look at that kind of tell the story of how these two different types of communities fare, but I've picked four here. So the bars on the right-hand side are distressed communities, meaning the sort of poorest, lowest income fifth of the communities in the country. So you can see in terms of education, poverty rates, job losses, losses of firms since the end of the Great Recession, these places look very different than more prosperous communities, which are reflected in the bars on the left-hand side of the chart. I'll talk about life expectancy in just a minute, but really you can pick almost any indicator in these communities and you'll see a pretty dramatic difference. If you go to the next page, a lot of this has to do with cycles of poverty. Low-income communities get trapped in cycles of poverty, intergenerational poverty it's sometimes called, and it becomes very difficult because of a lack of investment and a lack of resources in those communities for those communities and people within those communities to emerge from those cycles of poverty. The graphs on the right-hand side show that basically since Lyndon Johnson declared war on poverty in the 1960s, the poverty rate in the country has remained basically flat. So it's a really stubborn problem. If you go to the next slide, one of the other issues that we're grappling with, as you probably all well know in this country, that's becoming more and more acute by the day, and you're hearing more and more about this, is the affordability crisis. The blue line in this graph reflects median renter income since 1960. You can see that that's basically stayed flat. So income levels for renters have basically stayed flat, over the years. If you look at the purple bar, that's sort of rents over time, over that same period of time. So rents have gone up dramatically, and incomes have basically stayed stagnant in real terms. That creates a dynamic, these are the yellow bars that you see on the chart, where more and more households are what we call cost burdened, meaning that they have less and less discretionary income to pay for anything besides the basics, housing, healthcare, and food. They're using more and more of their incomes to pay for those things. That's a big issue that hasn't been addressed in this country. If you go to the next slide, and I won't spend any time here, but that crisis is even more acute in low-income communities, because what's happening there is there's not enough new supply of housing in those communities in particular coming online to keep up with the demand for affordable housing. And I'm not just talking about really, really poor people. I'm talking about folks in the workforce, cops, teachers, nurses, other folks that don't make a ton of money, but who have good, stable paying jobs. Those folks are increasingly cost burdened and unable to pay for rent and basics. If you go to the next slide, this shows you there's an education gap in the country, which is not surprising. You hear about this, kids and adults in higher income communities have much better educational outcomes than folks in low income communities. That gap is unfortunately widening. If you go to the next slide, health and wellness, this is a big issue. I'll just dwell on the map for a second. This is a really, I think, kind of sobering set of statistics. This is a life expectancies chart. And the communities or the counties in blue, dark blue, average life expectancies are around 85 to 87 years. The communities and the counties in dark red are closer to the mid-60s. In other words, you've got something like a 20-year discrepancy in terms of how long people live on average based on the county or the community you come from. The head of the Economic Innovation Group that again sort of put out this research famously said, when it comes to life expectancy, the county that you're born in the U.S. can make a bigger difference on how long you live than the country that you're born in. So it's a pretty sobering statistic. Coming back to opportunity zones now really quickly, if you turn to the next slide, one of the issues, not the only issue, but one of the real problems in all of this is a lack of investment in lower income communities. And so you see here a few statistics that show that in real terms, over the course of the last several decades, community investment, in particular in low income communities, has dropped off. To the point now where almost 80% of venture capital is flowing into only 3 communities in the country: Silicon Valley, San Francisco, New York, and Boston. The rest of the country is effectively being left behind by investment into small businesses that are growing and creating jobs. The graph on the left-hand side sort of shows how community banking has dried up over the years. That's through consolidation. It used to be 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago. There were a lot more of local community-based banks where community residents have relationships with their bankers, and they could go in and get credit for business opportunities for houses, things like that. Those community banks have increasingly been bought up and consolidated into big conglomerates like Wells Fargo and Bank of America and things like that, who all deploy automated underwriting criteria. So if you don't check the box according to their underwriting criteria, then you can't get access to a loan or to investment. that's having a real effect in a lot of these communities. If you skip to the next slide, there's sort of a historical practice that we're also combating in these communities called redlining, which is where literally the government and financial institutions would draw red lines on a map and say, these communities are too risky to invest in from a ethnic diversity perspective, from a poverty perspective. We just can't justify investing in these communities. So they would literally draw red lines on a map and categorically exclude those communities from investment. So if you skip to the next slide, all of this is by way of kind of teeing up, opportunity zones in the program. You can see that there's, as you guys probably have already heard, there's 8,700 zones that have been designated around the country. In the aftermath of this thing getting passed, we worked with a number of governors around the country in the first few months of last year to help them make decisions around where they should put the zones in their states. Governors have complete discretion, other than the communities had to meet certain income and poverty criteria, but other than that, governors have complete discretion within their states to decide where the zone should go. And the argument that we made to all of these governors that we worked with was that you should think about both where the need is greatest, but also where there are actual investable opportunities. Because unlike a lot of other federal programs, just because you draw a line on a map and say, okay, this is an opportunity zone, no federal dollars magically flow into these communities. This is a market-driven, market-based tool. And if investors can't come into these communities to find something to invest in, then no dollars will flow, nothing will happen, and it will be a waste of an opportunity. If you skip to the next slide, Cameron has a really nice handout prepared for you guys just on the kind of basics of the incentive. But this is my diagram. I think of this as sort of a three-tier capital gains tax incentive. You get a deferral on any capital gains that you roll into a qualified opportunity fund that is investing 90% of its assets into an opportunity zone. You get a deferral up until the end of 2026 on that original gain that you roll into an opportunity fund. If you stay in that investment for 5 years, you get a 10% step up on basis on that original gain, meaning you're going to pay 10% less tax on that original gain when at the end of 2026 you do have to recognize that gain and pay tax on it. If you keep the investment for 7 years, then you get an additional 5% step up. So in total, you can defer the tax on that original gain, and you can reduce the tax burden by 15%. The real sort of powerful part of the incentive is this third part, which is that if you keep your incentive in a zone, in a qualified opportunity fund, for 10 years or more, then any gains that you make in the zone are completely tax-free. And the way that works is you basically get a step up in basis on your investment up to fair market value. So if you sell an asset after 10 years, real estate, equity interest in a business, whatever it is, if you sell it after 10 years, then your basis in that investment steps up to the fair market value of that investment, meaning you pay no tax on that gain at all. If you skip to the next slide, and I'll sort of end here, this was meant to be a very flexible tool. In other words, it was not limited to one asset class. It wasn't supposed to be just about real estate or just about operating business investments. It was meant to be very flexibly applied in these communities to address whatever capital needs were required. As a result of that, you can, at least the way the legislation's written, and we're getting, increasing clarity from the regulations that the U.S. Treasury is releasing periodically. But at least according to the regulation, these are the kinds of things that you can invest in. Startup companies, smaller, low-growth businesses like, dry cleaners, car washes, other kind of Main Street businesses in these communities. Real estate, obviously, manufacturing, development, incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces, rental housing, affordable housing, alternative energy. Really, the list goes on and on. Maybe just really quickly on the next slide, just to kind of of break down where the zones are in the state, I think Governor Herbert did a really nice job and go at it of, kind of coming up with a nice mix of zones. Governor Herbert wanted to spend, he had 46 zones to designate. He wanted to put half of those in rural areas off the Wasatch Front and half of those in the Wasatch Front. And so that's reflected in the map. It's a nice mix of urban, rural, suburban areas. It includes tribal lands. There are renewable energy opportunities out in eastern and southern Utah. There are some tourist areas adjacent to the national parks and other places. There are areas that are adjacent to intellectual property hotspots like hospitals, universities, et cetera, et cetera. So I think Utah ended up with a really nice mix of zones. I won't spend any time on it, but just to close it out, if you look at the next couple of slides, I spent a lot of time, I'm raising an opportunity fund with Jim Sorensen, and we're raising money nationally to deploy into projects, both real estate projects, but also small business investments around the country, including in Utah. But I also spent a lot of time talking to state and local governments about kind of strategies and tactics that they can deploy to attract capital to their community. And I just want to close by saying I've been really impressed with Provo City. They engaged on this very quickly. I think they've been thoughtful around developing a strategy to engage with investors and try to attract some of that capital to Provo. And so I sort of see Provo as kind of a best practice or best in class example of a local government that's really getting serious about this, because it is a massive opportunity. There's something like $6 trillion of unrealized capital gains in the U.S. right now, just in equities, just in stocks and bonds. That's not including real estate. So if you can even get a small fraction of that $6 trillion flowing into some of these zones, it's a massive investment opportunity. It's a massive community development opportunity, and I think on balance will be a really good thing for these communities. So with that, I'll wrap up. Thank you so much for having me, and sorry again that I wasn't able to be with you in person. I don't know if we have time for a question or two, but I'm certainly happy to take one or two if there are.
Just a quick question. I don't want to do that. Just a quick question, Jeremy. Are we available to send the slide deck to the attendees?
Yeah, absolutely. There's more information in there that we didn't cover. So yeah, please do send that around. And if people have questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, we have one question.
Do these incentives work backwards? I assume not, but it was enacted in 2017. If you invested in 2015, does that work backwards? Or?
So the question was, do these incentives work backwards? If you invested in 2015, are they proactive?
Yeah, that's a great question. There has to be an actual acquisition event that happens after January 1 of 2018, which was basically the effective date of the legislation. So let's say that you bought a parcel, let's say we're talking about real estate, and you bought a parcel in an opportunity zone back in 2015. So obviously back then, not an opportunity zone, but becomes later an opportunity zone. You have a couple of choices. One, you could obviously sell that land, and in theory, there might be some appreciation on that land by virtue of it now being in an opportunity zone. We're seeing some of that. You might also be able to joint venture and do kind of a related party transaction and sort of sell that property into a partnership that you're a part of, that you're a partner in. The only catch there is that there's a 20% threshold on the related party transaction, meaning that you can't own more than 20% of the partnership that buys the property from you. So there's a little bit of a restriction there, but let's say that you're a developer or just a landowner and you want to put that parcel in play, you can sell it to a joint venture or to a partnership that you're a part of. You have to have less than 20% of the interest of the partnership. But you could then partner with a developer, or with an investor, or other groups to come in and do something with that parcel and still capture 20% of the economics of that project.
So we're not getting any more hands, but Jeremy, thank you so much for talking with us, and we'll definitely send out the slide deck, and we appreciate your time once again. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
So with that, we'll go ahead and start the panel discussion. And again, some of our panelists weren't able to make it, so we can bring up Cameron Gunter and David Walter. So originally we had Jeremy to be on here along with Ben Becker from Zions Bank, and obviously Cameron and David. And we appreciate them for coming out, but we just wanted to ask a few questions for those who are investors or those who are kind of curious about opportunity zones. So one, first and foremost, can the two panelists please introduce themselves? We'll start with Cameron.
Yeah, so I'm Cameron Gunter with PEG Development. I started PEG Development in 2003. We were fortunate enough to work with Zions Bank to build and own this building here. We also enjoy this room a lot. We currently have a $200 million Opportunity Zone fund in place. We've deployed almost $50 million to date out of Opportunity Zone funds. It was fortunate enough for us as a company that our strategy has been urban infill developments throughout the Intermountain West, from Anchorage, Alaska, down to Phoenix, Arizona. And a lot of those, several of those properties that we were developing actually ended up being in an Opportunity Zone designation. So it really fit when the law was finally adopted, and regulations, well, most of the regulations have come out. There's still some answers that we have, or some questions we have to be answered. But that's PEG. We're in this building. We do a lot. As you heard in Provo, we really like Provo. We've invested a lot in Provo. We're currently at a space in this building and preparing to build a new office building in an Opportunity Zone as well here downtown. So, and we can get more into some of the other questions about what we're doing and some of the ideas.
Good morning, my name is David Walter. I work for Provo City in the redevelopment agency. So to be a little, one of my areas of responsibility, we do tax increment financing for certain projects. We've been fairly active as a community in the different parking structures in the downtown, so we've done a lot there, but we've also invested in creative project areas that cover significant chunks of what eventually became the Opportunity Zone in Provo. So we do have some limited ability to do some local incentives on top of the enterprise zones.
Appreciate it, thank you. So the first question, this is for either one of you. Does an Opportunity Zone make a bad project good? Does it push it over the edge?
So I guess my first, what do you say when you say bad project?
So I guess, so as far as a bad project, like if there is right now it's not making financial sense for the investor to make that significant investment. Well, with an Opportunity Zone, does that put that financial sense from B to an A or C to an A? Does that make?
So we've done quite a bit of research on this. PEG Development did a panel at another university here in Utah, which, Scott, you'll really appreciate this. It's at the University of Utah Law School. And our title to it, or our seminar, was Opportunity Zone or Danger Zone, because we get a lot of people, because of where we're developing, come to us with properties that, because it was in an Opportunity Zone, think that this thing will make a lot of sense. They start raising their price. So as we look at things, we've done quite a bit of research and looked at the tax implications of what this means to investors. there's about a 260 basis point spread in return benefit by going into an opportunity zone if you hold the property if you're able to get the 15% step up. Now, what you have to understand, that 15% or the 15% step up, if you do not deploy money this year, you've lost that. So the max you can get is 10% because you have until the tax year ending 2026. So our strategy as a company has been, look, if the deal doesn't work as a normal deal without opportunity zones and some of the other incentives that we can tack on with the cities, we just don't do the deal. So our policy in-house has not changed on the return standards. So what we can do, however, is provide some opportunities like we're doing in Salt Lake to provide some additional affordable housing in that market, and our returns still hit our hurdle, but it does allow us to do what I think the statute was planned for. So in our opinion, opportunity zones don't make a bad project good. What it does is it makes it a better opportunity for investors that have had stocks, bonds, sales of companies now to get into the real estate world and tap into that $6 trillion that Jeremy was talking about of gains that are outstanding.
Do you have anything to add? Okay. As a property owner, if I own property, how do I go about attracting an investor or investment?
So one of the ways you could do that is certainly by reaching out to Dixon and his group with the Economic Development Department, because they do field a lot of inquiries from outside agencies and outside interest about what opportunities there are actually within Provo. If you're, let them know that you're willing to sell your property, and they'd be happy to connect you with some of those folks that they talk to on a regular basis about investing in the community. And then obviously there are, they have local contacts with local developers, and they would be happy to make that connection and make it work.
David, I would say even if you don't want to sell, you just want to purchase, you don't have to sell your ground just to do a deal.
Right. And so there was that opportunity, I think, that the gentleman on the phone was talking about, that putting it into a joint venture, you have the property, and not, you didn't have to necessarily sell it off. So.
Yeah, so there's still some clarity that needs to happen there. And we're in the process of this contribution right now on a property. And the regulations aren't out, so there's more complication, but yes, there's the contribution side of it, as long as you're under the unrelated party. But to answer the other question, how do you go about attracting? Like, it's still, as I said earlier, that there still needs to be the proper use on the property, right? So, as you saw up there are multiple ways to benefit from this opportunity zone, and one of them is if you start your business in that area. You don't have to build real estate. What you do have to do as part of the law, and this is legislative, is you have to spend at least 100% of $1 over the acquisition price. So if you acquire a piece of ground for $2 million, you have to improve the ground by $2,001,000 for it to qualify. So it's not just going to buy a building or just going in and moving in a building and you qualify. You have to do improvements. So whether it be your retail business, whether you start a bank, whether you start a new startup tech company, that building or improvements have to be, we have to do 100%. Yeah, have to create value.
Yeah, we'll take a question from the audience.
Obviously, there's a lot of startups in the area. Most fast-growing startups don't stay in one place for more than a year, let alone 5 to 10. I don't know if either of you or anyone here knows the law around that. Is the high-growth startup being invested in the opportunity zone have to be there the entire period or a certain period? Or
yeah, so the law states that the revenues have to be generated in the opportunity zone. So my company, for example, I don't generate the revenue here in this building. The revenues for our company is generated in multiple cities that we're doing projects in. A bank, however, generates their revenues for the most part, in the facility or retail store. So depending on the startup, where your revenue is generated, it has to be generated in that opportunity zone in order for you to qualify.
All of it, or a percentage, or?
I'm not sure. Jeremy, if he was on the phone, he has a better answer, because he's much more versed in the business side of it. We strictly are real estate development, and apartments and hotels. So all of our funds are generated in that building. So it doesn't. We don't have to look at the differences.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, Cameron, I was going to tag on to that and ask you a further question about it. So I don't know if this will be in your wheelhouse or not, but like, for example, one of our portfolio companies has already taken advantage of this opportunity, worked with the capital fund that was able to provide them with special R&D benefits and rates because of being in the economic opportunity zone. And we've in fact had them be so affected by it, they're moving their headquarters back to Provo from a different city. Now it's a technology company. So I was just curious if you've seen other examples outside of that where it's not real estate, where it applies. So I don't know if you have.
I haven't, just because we haven't been into that. There are some groups that are talking to us about that. Like I said, Jeremy is probably the most well-versed in that, because that's really what they're pushing with Jim Sorensen, is driving businesses into that opportunity zone. And that, if you look at his slides, that's really what the law, between improving an area and creating new jobs in a distressed area, that's really what this legislation is about.
We did find that the group we worked with, they identified that if you purchase a technology company, or any company actually that's in an economic opportunity zone, then it will qualify for the special treatment from the tax perspective.
Okay. Well, one thing, I've done a little bit of research into that. It's I think you got to be careful about it. It has to be originally issued stock.
Correct.
So they'll buy it. It has to be issued stock. Capital gets deployed into that company that has their business in that. So it's not just to sell your company and get money. They don't get the money that way.
Good point, Matt.
So the similar rules apply if I acquire a business in an opportunity zone, then do I have to invest 100+% to qualify into that business?
I don't think so. So once again, if you guys have more information on the business side, that we strictly, like I said, are in the real estate. We understand a little bit about it, but not to the extent that I'm sure you guys do.
Can you speak on that at all, Steve?
So the acquisition of the business, again, if you buy the stock from, they're called secondary shares, right? Where you buy the shares from that person. That, from my analysis, is that does not qualify. However, if you deploy capital into that business and you're issued shares, originally issued shares from that business for your capital that you deploy into the business, then that's your qualified opportunity zone business property that you're purchasing. And then there's specific requirements within the operating businesses where 70% or more of their tangible assets have to be purchased after 2018 as well. So for startups, it works really well. For established manufacturing companies, it's a little bit trickier.
So there's a stipulation in the law that says that 7% of the tangible business property has to be in the opportunity zone. So as far as, tangible business property still has to be somewhat defined by the Treasury, but that's kind of one of the main stipulations that they just came out with in October. That if you want to, and you're right, as far as if an individual wants to, or a company wants to invest in an opportunity, or a company within an opportunity zone, they obviously have to invest their capital gains into that, and then they can receive the benefits. But as far as there's some certain stipulations that have to, as Jeremy was talking about, the 20%, and the 70% of tangible business property has to be there. And there, on the sheet that provided on the table, it's called Opportunity Zone Overview. There's some, it's kind of a basic overview of that, if you're talking a little bit about that. Yes?
Yeah, I wanted to hear a little bit more about your Salt Lake project where you were able to develop some affordable housing. Was that mixed use, mixed income? What did you do?
Yeah, so if anybody's familiar with Salt Lake, it's the old paper box property, right just south of Vivint Smart Home Arena. We were able to, like I said, tack on some additional incentives from the city that allowed us, as well as having the tax deferral, allowed us to go to 25% of our units in there. It is mixed use, ground floor, work, just smaller shop space, and then up above are apartments. 25% of those are in some way affordable, meaning some are 60% of AMI, and some are at 80% of AMI, and then we have full market rate apartments there. That project also has the first ever mechanical parking structure in the state of Utah and in downtown. It took us a little while for the fire department to get comfortable with how that works, but it is the first one that's approved. There has been a subsequent one approved on another project downtown.
So were the city incentives how you did the affordable housing?
A combination of both. We set up a matrix with the city to put 60%, 80%, and they had a way to calculate what the price of the ground was from that.
What's the length of affordability?
It's in perpetuity. It's a deed restricted unit.
Going along, building off of that question, this question is for David. What incentives are available from a city standpoint to developers or investors for, if we want to take advantage of the opportunity zone and maybe layer it on top of the city incentive?
So, excuse me. So most of the opportunity zone that we do have here in Provo is within a redevelopment project area of one sort or another. For example, the mall has its own project area. Downtown has one called the Center Street CDA. There is one first which would cover, if you're looking at the opportunity zones here, it would be Section 2. And then we're also looking at, and Section 6 has one in the Mount Vista Business Park. So there are opportunities for the city to participate through taxing and financing for some of this. And so that would be, you need to come to the city and talk to us. The nice thing about this is that these projects are already active, and so we're able to be a little more quick on them. If we had to create a brand new project area, we probably wouldn't be able to meet the thresholds given the recent changes in redevelopment law in the state of Utah. But there are opportunities for us to talk about trying to help fast track projects and to make it work. I think one of the things that we've looked at in the past is how we can use tax increment to help make a project a little more feasible. So that you have base, for those of you that don't understand tax increment, you need to, it's a portion of the tax that you typically pay. The agency doesn't levy a tax. We don't have that authority. But we've entered into agreements with the other taxing entities, such as the school district and the county, to capture a portion of the improvements that you would pay. You pay the taxes on those improvements, and a portion comes back. And so it's a incentive that's paid out after you've made the investment, but there's an opportunity for us to structure it. For example, for this building, we help for the parking structure. For the Marriott Hotel, we help assemble the property and pay for the parking structure. So we've talked with Peg about providing land write-downs for certain projects, and so those are some of the opportunities that we've had here.
This kind of gets to the business, investing in the business question. Can you, do the incentives work if the same business has locations in 2 opportunity zones? So for instance, if there was a business that had their offices in Provo and then had some storage facilities up in Salt Lake or American Fork or something, would that 70% threshold can still work?
So as far as the 70% threshold, in theory it could. However, again, regulations are still coming out from the Treasury Department, so it's still, Provo City is obviously not a tax advisor, and we're definitely not a lawyer. So we would highly recommend that you go talk to your financial or tax advisor about that. But as far as the regulations, so I was in charge of it before. I'm doing a lot of research on the opportunity zones, and so how I understood it is that, yeah, as long as 70% of the tangible business property, and so some questions have said, well, if I'm a manufacturing company, the raw materials coming in for me to manufacture my product, does that count as my tangible business property? And some people have said yes, others have said no. What about the finished product? Is that tangible business property? Other people have said yes, others have said no. So again, Treasury still has to come out with some of these regulations. So I mean, I would love to be able to say that, yeah, I'm in charge, sure, but I'm not.
Let me just make something, or make a comment. The legislation is clear. The way I understand it is it's new money, new gains that gets the treatment. And then you've got the 20% threshold on related parties. So whether it be real estate or the business, the concept is to create new dollars after 2018 into a project. So if you already have your stuff in that area, it's not going to qualify. So it's really creating the new opportunities, this new capital into the either the business, the real estate, whatever it is. So that's the intent behind the legislation. Now the regulations are clarifying is how some of this stuff gets treated, but the legislative part of it doesn't change unless it takes an act of Congress, right? So there's some clarifications that are happening within Treasury that's coming out. They've already come out with some regulations, and because the government shut down, they delayed the next clarifications. But if you look at the statute that was adopted by Congress, it's talking about new gain dollars being invested, and that's where you get the treatment. And that's the whole purpose of the bill. I mean, we had a discussion with Paul Ryan, who was also one of the instigators of the bill with the Sorensen and some of the others. And look, that's the intent. And so if you have that, and there's details that you got to figure out, but if you think of that as the intent and try to arrange what you're doing around that, and then ask for clarification, I think that's how we've approached everything.
So will there be other opportunity zones that will be created based upon need? And is that the governor that will stipulate those, or we're in a finite number now?
So once again, the 8,700 zones were adopted by legislative act. So unless legislature, Congress adopts a new zone, it doesn't happen. So there's no change in that through any governor or anybody. That has to go to the state. So that's done. And they had until a certain period of time to get that. So what it is, and it's part of the statute.
Are there any other questions? Well, some of the questions are more for Jeremy and for Benj, and so I think that they would be qualified more to answer some of those questions. Not to say that you're not.
Oh, you're right.
But I just don't want to just say something. Anyway, but first of all, we'd like to thank Zions Bank for allowing us to come in here. We really appreciate them and all their hard work and all that they do for Provo City. Secondly, GOA unfortunately wasn't able to be here, Governor's Office of Economic Development. They were able to sponsor this event as well. And so we're grateful for them, but again, they were not able to be here. But once again, we'd like to thank the panel, Cameron Gunter, David Walter, along with Eric Patrici, and Wayne Parson for their comments. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to come ask me, panelists. We'll be around for a little bit. On your table again is a brief opportunity zone overview. Feel free to take that with you along. The graphic page talks about all the projects happening within those opportunity zones. And on the back side of the page are actually the projects and the contact information of the project managers. Should you be interested in talking more about those projects,
and maybe even investing or becoming an investor in those projects. So once again, thank you so much for coming. We're so grateful for you here, especially braving the hard weather. But please drive safe, and we look forward to seeing you next week.